Kyle here from allmeatreviews.blogspot.com. Continuing on the Prog and Extreme Metal list. Please subscribe if you haven't subscribed. I really appreciate the people of subscribers. It's good to see some more people subscribing after a lot of time, a lot of work, for whatever that's worth. Anyway, so I'm just going to get into it because I'm up against the clock a little bit. I left off yesterday at number 26, number 25. Now we're in the top 25. Between the Buried and Me is Alaska. When I got into Between the Buried and Me in 2007, Colors was the album, of course, that everyone was talking about. It's like a big deal, and but this album was mentioned, and I mean the song on this album that most people think of it for is the song Selkies, The Endless Obsession. There's a King Crimson interval pattern, that sort of classic, like Three of a Perfect Pair. It's like, but it's heavy. That a few other bands have used too, but it's very, it's noticeable in that song, and that's a great part of that song. But Alaska is a terrific record. Compared to the Silent Circus, it was a step up in a lot of respects in songwriting and being more progressive. And now Kitty Cat's coming back on camera. She looks like he wants to. But I don't know, between All Bodies, Alaska, Robo-Turner, Backwards Marathon, The Primer. One of those songs has that little interval pattern. I think it's that, talking about beauty. We know we have beauty or whatever. I don't know. I mean, this showed Between the Buried and Me, using their dynamics, using their different styles besides metal and metalcore. And I grew to really like this album. I know there's an instrumental version of it too, but I grew to really like this album. Not as much as Colors, and spoiling, of course, but clearly to me, this was when I got into them, and still is really their second best album from 2005. So, yeah, I mean it's over the top, but I mean they were a gateway band to this whole extreme metal style for me, and it's I guess a little more raw. And you compare it to Colors and where they've gone since, but I like the mixture. I don't want just prog, and I don't just want metalcore or technical death metal. I want the mixture when it mixes well. When Tommy does the clean vocals, his voice is really angelic, actually, and his growls are while they're an acquired taste, they're pretty distinct. Although sometimes it can be a little bit repetitive, but anyway. Alaska from Between the Buried and Me, number 25. Number 24, No Exit. Gosh, just enjoying the afternoon massage, or what do you want to call it? No Exit from Fate's Warning. Again, another Fate's Warning album that I talked about recently. This, I guess you could say, in one sense, this is my favorite 80s Fate's Warning album. I never really thought about it that way. I mean, it's splitting hairs, of course, since I got so many Fate's Warning albums on this list, and I love them. The Ivory Gates of Dreams is an absolute masterpiece, sweet, epic, of prog metal, this is their heaviest album in a lot of respects. They're thrashy in a way. Of course, this is the first album with new singer Ray Alder, which, he's a favorite singer of a lot of people. The tracks on side A, between the title track, there's a little intro deal, but Shades of Heavenly Death and Silent Cries, Anarchy Divine. In a Word's okay, In a Word's decent, but the whole Ivory Gates of Dreams suite, and then the other complimentary tracks really make this one of my favorite records. Even though the production is what it is, it's from that period of time. I can't deny both nostalgia. I remember driving with this in the morning, going to work in the mid-90s, going out to Chanhassen, and frequently I always remember when it was cold out, this would be like something that would sort of help me warm up a little bit. I don't know. And it's also dreamy. The Ivory Gates of Dreams itself, if it just was that, I would have a hard time not putting this very high, just if it was like an EP. But anyway, it's like 25 minutes or something like that. The little intervals, Quietus, of course, was like a single that ended up on their compilation album, Chasing Time. It's catchy as hell, so... Anyway, No Exit, number 24 from Fate's Warning from 1988. Number 23, In Vain, the debut album for The Latter Rain from 2007, my top In Vain album on this list. They're supposed to put out a new album in 2020, sometime probably 2023, so, be interesting. They had Currents a few years ago, but This is the album that introduced me and many other people, of course, to them. This kind of style of like progressive blackened death metal, or blackened death, black metal, but not, the different styles of vocals. There's shrieks, there's growls, there's more like Dr. Claw, like gutturals. And the riffs, some of it's so epic, and the atmosphere and the kind of like the chugging sort of adventure or journey you go on, from As I Wither to the Titan, October's Monody, in the midnight hour. Some of it is a little humorous, I'll admit. It's like a funny cheese factor in a way in the vocal style, but I was just blown away by it. Just the riffs and the energy and the sort of the mood that it put you in. In Vain, they're from Norway, I think. And again, I just thought they were sort of like a side collaborative project, but they turned out to be like a real band. I don't know how often they play live though, but The Latter Rain is a fantastic debut album, a fantastic extreme metal album. It's very progressive. It's a favorite of mine. Anyway, another favorite from this band, a band that had been on this list many other times, Orphanland, Mabool, The Story of Three Sons of Seven from 2004. And I'll admit, when I bought this, I was still on the fence about listening to extreme vocals. So I bought it in like 2004, 2005. They played at Prog Power USA. And my favorite part of it was the bonus disc that came with the Orphaned Jam. But a few years later, when I finally got accepting of Opeth and other bands, like Between the Buried and Me, the stream vocals totally work. Like the growling, the folk elements, and then I just got even more and more into the concept, the riffs, the energy, the thematic kind of, the themes, the anthems in it, it's talking about different religions, the story of Three Sons of Seven. It's like, like an arc, it's like a biblical passage, a prophecy and that kind of stuff. But my favorites, Oceanland is great, A Call to Awake, The Quest, Building the Ark, the title track, Mabool, The Flood, The Storm Still Rages Inside. It's a trip. It's a great, just like, it's an escapist album. It takes you to a different thing, it's like you're sort of hearing the story of, something centuries ago. And Orphanland totally captures it. They're from Israel, but they incorporate, different faiths and religious passages, not just from Judaism. Judaism probably doing the biggest with maybe the Old Testament, but whatever, It's not overtly religious. It's a good blend, and the folk elements, the percussive, and the rhythmic, the percussion and the rhythmic elements. And they use a lot of ethnic, Middle Eastern instrumentation on it. So, yeah, Mabool, The Story of Three Sons of Seven by Orphanland from 2004. My favorite Orphanland album, number 22. Number 21, 6 Degrees of Inner Turbulence from Dream Theater from 2002. Now, I felt like, at the time, I didn't like this album as much when it came out in 2002 as Scenes from Memory, but not that soon after, I was won over by this one even more. It's a double disc, like 100 minutes long. The title track on the second disc is an ambitious, sweet, although to me it's never felt 42 minutes long, even though it is. It never felt, it's a little bit like someone like Thick as a Brick, or some of the other records I'm going to be talking about. And I have my favorites on the suite between About to Crash. Solitary Shell is awfully catchy, even though it's similar as with Peter Gabriel's Salisbury Hill. Of course, people did, but the outro doesn't sound like Salisbury Hill at all. It's the About to Crash reprise and Losing Time grand finale. War Inside My Head. All the parts are good. Tussing Something All. There's like a Megadeth element on that. But then you talk about the first disc. The Glass Prison is a great piece. It's my favorite part of the 5 track 12-step suite. I don't know, people love that song great. It has that Chapman stick part that I think John Mayung played that stands out among other parts. But I actually I like The Glass Prison, Blind Faith and Misunderstood, and Great Debate actually in some ways. Great Debate does have a Tool element, and the samples you've heard many times if you listen to it, so you get kind of memorize them. They get a little bit brooding, a little bit what's the word? A little bit much because you've heard them, but you could say it's the same thing about Pink Floyd music in a lot of other cases. Blind Faith, the unison section, is some of the best music that they ever created, especially with Jordan. Misunderstood. The outro's kind of weird, but it's got a great chorus. It's big and epic. Disappear, I like as a closer. It's, dreamy and surreal. 6 Degrees of Mere Turbulence is basically a perfect record. It's a long record, of course, but I find that it doesn't have nothing really stand out as being poor or something I wouldn't want to listen to. I still like The Glass Prison. I just find people love The Glass Prison, and I find, some of the other songs I like even more. But, 6 Degrees of Mere Turbulence I find to be the peak of the Jordan Ruiz period of Dream Theater from 2002. Came out early in 2002. Number 21. Number 20, Ghost Reveries, my number one Opeth album from 2005. I know it doesn't have Steven Wilson, but there's a Deep Purple influence on this record that I love. I know some people don't like it, but to me, clearly the finest track on here, and it's pretty much the finest track that Opeth ever did, was the Grand Conjuration. I love it's like Hammond B3 organ. The organ is just terrific in that. Ghost of Perdition, The Bane of the Hounds, Beneath the Mire. Reverie, Harlequin Forest. It still has enough of the death metal, but it's sort of leaning a little more prog. I don't know, the atmosphere. Again, I lean toward the Deep Purple influence. I appreciate this Opeth album the most. It's a terrific atmospheric record. I think they definitely took something from their experience working with Steven Wilson when they were writing and recording this to make this. The production's really good. So, Ghost Reveries from 2005, my number one Opeth album, at number 20 on the Prog and Extreme Metal album list. Number 19, cracking voice again. Number 19, Zero Hour, their second album, standout record among their catalog, The Towers of Avarice from 2001. I saw them at Prog Power USA, the first one, and a couple subsequent festivals. Bought it sort of on a whim. I only saw much of their performance. I did see some of their performance from memory, but about 3 or 4 months later, I played some of this on the radio. I started to listen to this. People were talking about this, and it just hit me over like a ton of bricks how good they were. The singer sounds a little bit like Jeff Tate, but I grew to like Garrick Roswell's voice really was distinct. For some reason, the compositions on this album were just so good. The concept of like a building that basically takes over a city, I believe. Great grower record, yeah. Demise and Vestige is my favorite track here, the 15-minute, 47 seconds. The only thing I'll say about that, it's got this section that goes back and forth and builds. And I always felt like it could build even more. It doesn't, but it doesn't matter because it's so damn good. My other favorites like Stratagem. I know there was a sampler for Laser CD. I think it was Ken Golden gave a sampler of some of what's it called was on there. Spiral Architect was on there with Insect, and some other bands. I know that was the song he selected. It was kind of their a good introductory track and to sample this album, I suppose. Great bass lines, but I the atmosphere and the technical prowess on this record is what makes it really stand out. Why it's a little bit higher than some of these records, and it's always been one of my favorite progressive metal albums ever. Most technical. It's not death metal, so it wouldn't be called technical death metal, but it's very technical. It takes a little bit from Cynic or Death or Spiral Architect, but the thing is, this came out a year after. Probably hadn't even heard the guys in Zero. I hadn't heard Spiral Architect at the time. This is their second album. They'd put a previous album that was more traditional prog metal, but this, I think they found their sound. There's no real keyboards on this, and it doesn't need it. It's the sci-fi vein of a Terminator Matrix. Interesting. I wrote this back in 2007. But yeah, it's a terrific record. It's the cover art fits the mood so well. It's an escapist album if you're just having a bad day and you're just pissed off at someone or something. Great, great therapy album, because the riffs are just so in your face and so powerful. Anyway, Jason Tipton. Number 18, Fates Warning Disconnected. So we see Fates Warning again. Talked about how I love this record and I go to bat for it, and I don't know why a lot of people don't care for it that much. It has maybe their finest composition ever in Still Remains, a 16-minute piece with Kevin Moore, showing up. He didn't really write any of it, but it's just perfect prog metal, atmospheric. It's one of my favorite songs ever. Just in general. I've heard it so many times. I have it coming back to my head frequently. I mean, but beyond that, the rest of the songs, Peace, was it Something from Nothing, the previous track, is nearly as good in some ways. Pieces of Me, that kind of like the build-ups and the crescendos on this album, and so is a little bit repetitive, but I don't mind it. I'm not bothered by it. Some people might feel like it is at 8 minutes. But the sort of Middle Eastern and Tool elements, some of the keyboard parts added onto that. One's a catchy, sort of energetic, shorter track, and then the bookended parts are great. They fit the vibe and the mood that is set in this album, Disconnected. I know some of the influence was on Jim Mattheos's father, the passing of it. That's why, especially the song Still Remains. But I love this album. I'm not bothered by if it has like an industrial feel or even the Tool influence, because I don't like Tool, but I like a lot of bands that they influenced. So anyway, even though Tool came out way after Fates Warning as a band, but it's like they were influenced by modern music, Jim Mattheos specifically. Number 18, Disconnected. Number 17, Cynic's Focus. An absolute classic in technical death metal, technical metal, and then they have the jazz fusion element, of course, on there. Came out in 1993. The death influence is, obvious, which is kind of crazy that I've never actually spent a lot of time with death. I've listened to some songs, but Veil of Maya, there's a band that actually named themselves after that. Veil of Maya is a highlight. Textures, same thing can be said, actually. Euroboric forms, although the word textures is just standard, vernacular. But, it's just, the sort of tapping jazz elements and the segues, the processed vocals and some of the screeching. It all works like clockwork on this. I mean, is it melodic? Is it catchy? Not too much, but it's very sort of less is more, really finely crafted. It's only a 36-minute album. I didn't even realize it was quite that short. But the thing is, some of the members did like Atheist after this, I believe. This is like the introduction to Sean Malone, I believe. I mean, Sean Reinhardt also had been in. He maybe had played with Death. I forget, but it was kind of like, and they were a trio. You have Paul Masvidal too. I found that it was just like a lightning in a bottle, and it was very futuristic sounding because you listen to all the bands that they influenced, including Obscura, who are a band I like, but I've never gotten totally into. I don't know who. That's a good question, really. I mean, what band do I really like that this Cynic totally influenced? And the thing among the Cynic catalog, clearly this has always been my favorite focus. That's, what is it? The syncopation, stuff like that. People talk about the guitar riffs, the way that, Masvidal used the guitar riffs. It's just a masterclass in technical prowess. How to write something technical and have it not go on too long, you could say, Anyway, the musicianship's off the charts. The drumming, especially from Reinhardt, on Focus, from 1993. Number 16, Protest the Heroes, Kezia. Kezia. I said it originally Kezia. Their debut album 2006. So a lot of debut albums on this list, of course, like the Progressive Art Rock list had a lot of debut albums. So I just happen to like a lot of debut albums. It just so happens that a lot of the best records happen to be almost nostalgic. Sentimental albums happen to be debut albums. This is a concept album about feminism, I think, and some other things, but that's the thing about this record that stands out a lot compared to all the other Protest the Hero records, and even in the sort of progressive metalcore style, the way they incorporated the dynamics with the female vocals and the folk elements, I always felt like I wanted them to do more of that with the the great riffs and the Roddy's falsettos and some of the screaming, the busyness that. They're a little bit like Sickoth. They're not quite as weird as Sickoth, but I found that they did enough with this album to be very distinct, and it wasn't a little raw, yeah, but raw in a good way. It had more charm because it was raw, and it just felt like the compositions and the way, the album's a trip. My favorites like Divinity Within, Nautical, Blindfolds Aside, that's a great track. The Divine Suicide of K. I don't know. I just unfortunately they never did that style, especially bringing it was Kelly, Jadea Kelly. She's a star on this record. I know if she guest appeared in one of the other records, but she wasn't featured the same way. And And so while I like, and including Fortress, the record after it was a little further down, this album is their crown jewel. It just sort of stood out. The other thing I always think about them is they were in the Alternative Press issue. That's a lot like the Cinnamon and Sirens and a lot of bands I enjoyed. House of Fools were in there, I believe. And I remember hearing samples from them. It was just like this crazy technical guitar work, and I thought, well, they're just a guitar band. That's what I thought they really were. But I was totally wrong about that. From Canada. Kezia, number 16 from 2006, their debut album. A classic, a favorite of mine. I love that record. So number 15, because I think I'm just going to do all the way up to the top 10 so we can get this in. Subterranean Masquerade's Suspended Animation Dreams. So I'll do through 11 today. The debut album from them, a couple of the records made the list, of course. This came out in 2005. Although I swear I saw once it was released initially in 2004, but whatever. Tomer Pink's, project, progressive, like death rock. They had it's like a 70s vintage sound with some growls. Paul Coor, of course, is a star on this with his growling. The one line about on the mirror hanging on the wall, it's just, I always like laugh at that part, but I love it. 6 strings to cover fear. The string arrangement is just to die for on that. It's weird. It's very organic sounding, acoustic at points, but they still use heavy riffs. I don't know. Is there like an Israeli or like a Hebrew influence on this? I don't know. It's tagged as Jewish music just because they're from Israel. He's from Israel, but it's like less is more. I know that was compared to Opeth. In fact, there was a review on here that talked about it being compared to Opeth. When I'd never heard of it. It's like, we want to hear a band that sounds a lot like Opeth that sort of is a good. Jazzy Opeth. I don't think that was the review, though. That's what really got me. I had not seen their name before, and then other people started talking about them a little bit after that. But I think it probably was in 2007. So, yeah, it's a dreamy record. The way they use dreams, like lucid dreaming and stuff like that, a little bit like Dredge's El Cielo. The concept is cool. There's just a lot of charm with this record, although I never felt like it was over the top. It was like the right amount, but I mean, is it addictive? There's other records that are below it or more addictive. Like Kezia, I would put as being more addictive. But for the right mood, it's really, really good. And that's why it ended up this high at number 15. Suspended Animation Dreams. Kind of a mouthful. Even the name Subterranean Masquerade is kind of a mouthful. 2005, the debut album. Of course, they had the EP that I put on here before that. So, number 14, Light of Day, Day of Darkness. Like Toehider's... I have little to no memory of these memories. The 47-minute track, or Jethro Tull's Thick as a Brick, which is 47 minutes, and Pleasant Shade of Grey from Fate's Warning. This is a 1 hour and 6 second song. Light of Day, Day of Darkness from Green Carnation. I think it's their second album. Pretty sure. And it definitely sounds daunting and a little intimidating. And just looks like, how could this be any good? How could this really be like? How could this not be sort of an album, a song, a piece of music that just goes on forever, and it does it it flows so well. It's hard to believe. It's really unbelievable how well it flows. You listen to it and you just kind of like, okay, I'm gonna get bored here, and it's just you want to hear the whole thing. It's as simple as that. It's like a classical piece. When you hear like Beethoven's Ninth Symphony or whatever, or some Bach piece, the Brandenburg Concerto, you want to hear the whole thing typically. I mean, yes, it is a little bit ego-driven. I'm not saying that P word that everyone uses. It is ego-driven, and they're a little bit narcissistic's not the right word, but it's sort of just like, we're going to write an hour song, I don't give a rat's ass what anyone else thinks. We'll see how it comes out. We think we can do it, we'll do it, and whoever likes it, whoever doesn't like it, so be it, And they pulled it off. The thing I'll say is, even because there's not really growling on this, it's not death metal. It says doom metal, but I did not hear about this in 2001 at all. And so that's the weird thing about this, is that I got into this, and I probably could have liked this long before I got into Between the Buried and Me, and even some of the Opeth stuff. But what can you do? Who knows if I would have liked it back then in 2001 or 2002, 2003. If they played the whole thing at the Prague Power USA Festival a few years ago, I would have loved to have seen that, but money, priorities, time, etc. But anyway, Light of Day, Day of Darkness, you could have used to be able to buy it on Amazon for $1. 1 hour song that is, it's one that I've listened to several times, but the truth is I probably still should listen to because it's got so much. I should just break it down by every 3 or 5 minute sections with the lyrics and stuff like that. It's it has like a druids and like what's that word, Celtic element to it almost. It's very not spiritual, but it's like clean doom metal, in some ways. It's very ritualistic and chanting. I could go on like a hike in the mountains and listen to it anyway. It's terrific. So number 13, Handful of Rain from Savatage. I've had many Savatage albums on this list, of course, and this is my top Savatage album. This was an important record in a lot of ways because it was the sort of response and the reaction to the loss of their beloved and original member and form member and brother of John Oliva, Chris Oliva, the guitarist. That being said, the music is really the way I obviously evaluate this stuff and how much I listen to it. And this was the first Savatage album I listened to, and I was won over by it pretty soon after. Not initially, but by the second or third, maybe the fourth time I listened to it. Not listenings. Especially the song Chance. That's like Queen, like Bohemian Rhapsody in some ways. One of the greatest, if not the greatest, sort of call and response, layered vocal tracks where they kind of go row, row, row your boat. It's fantastic. Zach Stevens never sounded better. It's one of the greatest progressive songs ever, progressive metal songs ever. So among that, the rest of it though, I went back to it frequently. I always wanted to hear Chance, of course, but Taunting Cobras is good. It's this kind of silly title, but the riff is just in your face. Handful of Rain, the title track, is great. I always think of Bon Jovi's Wanted Dead or Alive when I hear the guitar part on that, the acoustic guitar part, where it's like an acoustified electric. But then you have like Stare Into the Sun, Castles Burning, Watching You Fall. It's the emotion, the passion, the writing, and the melodies, and Zach's voice. I'm sure the lyrics that John wrote, because like John basically wrote this whole record. I know the whole band is not it. They do have, of course, Alex Skolnick, the famed Testament guitarist who went on to do jazz, stuff like that. He plays a lot of the guitar parts, almost all of it. But it's weird, I love Savatage. Paul O'Neill did produce it, and this being their masterpiece to me. Alone You Breathe, of course, that was like the second or third time but it meant more on this album because of everything that happened to Chris Oliva. He died in a car crash. Some drunk driver hit him. Unfortunately, he should be around still. But yeah, this was an album that an absolute class. I talked about it when I got the vinyl a few months ago. I love Handful of Rain. It's an all-time favorite. So number 13, number 12, Birth's Lazarus Bird. Now I talked about Mastodon, and while I liked Mastodon, when I heard this album, I had listened to their previous album, and Norigo was on this list way down. This, to me, I felt like the easiest way to describe it is this is like a band doing something similar to Mastodon, but much better, or better at least. It's prog metal, and it's sort of sludgy prog metal. They're from Sweden. This is their swan song. They are active again, thankfully, the last 3-4 years. 4 years, they did a festival, so we may see some new music from them again. It would be great, but they've been basically broken up. They did break up like a year after, like 2009, 2010. But I felt like they went out on such a high note. This Cripple God, we watched the Silver Rain, I Exterminate the Eye, I Hold Vertigo, Momentum. The guitar textures are so good, and so even though the vocal sounds like he's a little bit like he's constipated, it kind of grew on me, and it's really actually an interesting vocal style. I mean, Mastodon uses a similar vocal style. The singer from Burst. This is their most progressive. And of course, they use also, like Between the Bear and Me, a King Crimson riff. I can't remember which song it was. It might be We Watched the Silver Rain, but City Cloak is a great ender. It's kind of dreamy at the end there. I love Lazarus Bird. It's grown a lot. When it came out, the fans were kind of mixed about it, but I know over time it's become a bit of a cult classic, or a classic that's sort of aged really well. Yeah, because you look at it, it's clearly their most rated album, and it's their highest rated on here, 3.57 versus 3.48. It's 886 ratings. If they ever come back and put out another record, I think this thing's only going to get rated even higher. I mean, it still holds up. I got it on vinyl a few years ago, and that was a big deal. So, number 12, versus Lazarus Bird from 2008. One of the many records I love from 2008. So, number 11, Galactic Cowboys, Space in Your Face. I'm going to do this as the final album for this video, at least, probably for today. The second album from Galactic Cowboys from 1993. I think this is the album they toured with Dream Theater. And actually, they opened for Savatage at one point, too. The King's X similarities are there. But it's a lot heavier. The sort of, Beatles elements, Beatles meets Metallica, like Beatallica, but like with original music in a way. I think they put down like a tempted flute, a tempted clarinet. It's more of just the melodic element with the heavy kind of bassline groove metal. There's obviously some still of the grunge sound on it, but my favorite, so many favorites. Space, the title, the opening track, You Make Me Smile, is really catchy and energetic. Blind, 7 minutes, 7.5 minutes. I forgot it was that long. No Problems. They say problems. Ranch on Mars, the djembe used, and it's dreamy vocal harmonies. Circles in the Fields. I Do What I Do. Every track on this song. I promoted this to 5 stars a few years back. It was like a little over 10 years ago, because it's such a fun record. It's such an energetic record. The musicianship is pretty damn good. But largely it's just like a trip. There's like jellyfish and spilt milk, or it's one that I want to listen to beginning to end, and it's very nostalgic. It's such a fun, busy, energetic record that I never get sick of it. Yeah, Faith No More. There's just so much going on in such a good way. Space in Your Face is just an all-time favorite. Of course, it also includes the services of Dane Sonnier, one of the original guitarists. He ended up leaving. Wally Farkas, who had a close relationship with King's X, as I learned in the King's X book, then joined the band. And then he did rejoin them for their comeback album a few years ago, Dane Sonnier. But I think the detuned guitars he was a big part of that, and that's why this album came out sounding the way it did, having some of the King's X similarities, but mind you, they sound a lot. There's a lot of differences from Galactic Cowboys and King's X, but they're a band that hugely appeals to King's X fans, and I'm no exception. King's X fans, and I'm no exception to that. And not to be confused with, of course, the Galactic Cowboy Orchestra. So, anyway, that's it for today for the top numbers 25 to 11. Thank you for watching. Please subscribe if you haven't subscribed. I'm going to try to do the top 10 tomorrow, hopefully, the big top 10, and then move on to some stuff just to review exactly what I'm planning to do next. I have a big Kevin Gilbert songs list that's pretty close to done, so that's next on the docket. Doing songs of the year for like 2005 probably, and probably starting to do the songs list for some of the other bands like the Deer Hunter, Marillion, or not in that order, and King's X eventually. And then, obviously, 2023 preview. There's some other stuff. I need to do reviews of those documentaries, the Elephant Six documentary, Elephant Six Company, and the Ryan James Dio documentary. Maybe some TV stuff, depending on how things going. I am making some progress on the Marillion book, so there's a lot of planned videos, but of course these epic lists are a big chore in a way, but they're also fun to kind of do. It's a fun journey. But again, thank you for watching. Please subscribe if you haven't subscribed, and I'll see you next time.